What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, and we are kicking it off with our first Week 10 college football preview right here on the Bluebloods. And of course, you already know the first preview is always our game of the week right here on the Bluebloods, which means if you subscribe, like the video, comment your score prediction below, who you think is going to win, and give me an exact score. If you get that right, you will win our $50 Venmo giveaway right here on the Blue Bloods, man. So make sure to do those three things and enter yourself in the giveaway. But we have a gigantic SEC West matchup between two teams who really and truly, I would have to say, are acting as dark horses in this SEC championship race right now. We got the number 12 Auburn Tigers traveling to College Station to face the number 13 ranked Texas A&M Aggies, and the Aggies are a 4.5 point favorite right now. And this game will be the CBS SEC Game of the Week, 2:30 p.m. Central Time kickoff live on CBS, man. But a battle of two 6-2 teams. Let's set the stage real quick, man. The Tigers come into this matchup off back-to-back top 20 wins over SEC West opponents and are looking to make it three in a row over some of the top teams in their division. And Brian Harson's team, man, if you would have told, I would say anyone outside of Auburn that Brian Harson's team, after that, Penn State loss or Georgia loss, that they'd be sitting controlling their own destiny after, I guess racking up some ranked wins here, that they would have a chance to be in Atlanta. Not many people would have believed you. But here they are with a big game against A&M to really set themselves up for a stretch run to that SEC championship game. And it all starts with the play of Bo Nix and Tank Bigsby on the offensive side of the ball, along with the Derek Mason defense that it's really seemed to get better week in and week out and has culminated in some great performances, including holding Ole Miss to their lowest scoring output of the season and holding down Matt Corral to, ending his 19-game streak of a passing touchdown in every game that he has played in. So that is a huge, huge feat for Auburn. Big game this weekend for the Tigers. But on the other side, let's not sleep on the Aggies here, man. Coming in on a 3-game win streak of their own, which includes a number one ranked Alabama upset in College Station just 3 weeks ago. And Jimbo Fisher's squad has shown a lot of improvement. A lot of people wrote them off after back-to-back losses to Arkansas and Mississippi State, but that 2-game losing streak seemed to have awoken something in this team, and it really shows the type of culture that Jimbo Fisher has built at his time at College Station, because these guys have controlled their own destiny as well. They went out, they will find themselves in Atlanta for the SEC championship if Alabama drops one more game. So that could be huge for A&M. And so really and truly, if they win this game, they're going to be rooting very hard for Auburn at the end of the season to beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl, because that will send A&M to the SEC championship game if they win out. So everything's still there for A&M. And with a win here, they could find themselves back in the top 10, guys, where they started out the season, they dropped out after that Arkansas loss, but they have fought and climbed their way back very, very under the radar like these past few weeks with some big wins. So that's the stage, this matchup currently. A&M leads the overall matchup 6-5. But outside, when you look at what this matchup has been when A&M joined the SEC in 2012, it's been competitive. Auburn's won 5, A&M's won 4. And another interesting note is Auburn has never lost in College Station. That is insane. And up until, just a few years back, these teams were trading wins. Auburn would win in College Station. A&M would knock them off in Auburn. It went very, very back and forth there. But A&M is looking to defend their home field here with their first win over Auburn at home since they joined the SEC. But let's get to the keys of the game here real quick, man. The key for the Tigers, and early in the season, I was like, it has to be Tank Bigsby. You have to run the ball. You have to establish your offense on the ground first to help Nix out. But right now, with how this offense is looking, I would say the key for Auburn really lies in being more balanced with their offense, more than just a run dominant team. Because we saw last week, and when the rushing game with Bigsby, and the passing game with Nix are both clicking at full capacity. This team is really, really hard to stop. They scored on all but one drive in the first half against Ole Miss. And that was one of the keys last week when I previewed that game, is that I wanted to see Nix and Bigsby put it together in the same week. And they both had huge performances. And when you look at this Tigers team, they're averaging over 250 through the air and almost 200 on the ground. So they are very balanced anyway. And that's so important for this Mike Bobo offense that has really evolved. And he's really built this offense around what Auburn does well. And you see this offense evolving slowly but surely. Last week, they unveiled this 12 and 13 man personnel that just overwhelmed Ole Miss. So I'm assuming Bobo's going to come with some wrinkles in terms of that. But for me, let's start with the rushing attack since it has to be balanced. It's been the identity of this program for many, many years now, and the Tigers have a very, very strong running back room. They have one of the strongest in the SEC, and this is actually a huge matchup between two great running back rooms. But with Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter, you know, last weekend was one of the better performances on the ground for the Tigers, with Bigsby taking the lead. But Jarquez Hunter has showed that he can be the main guy if Bigsby's not, at his best. And he was a little bit banged up for a few weeks, but the last week was Bigsby's big return. So I'm expecting Bigsby and Hunter to split carries pretty evenly this week, depending, trying not to put too much work on Bigsby as he is still just coming off a bit of an injury. But Bigsby's rushed for over 660 yards, guys, over 5 yards per carry and 7 touchdowns. He ranks top 5 in the SEC in rushing yards, while Hunter over 530 on the ground, still over 7.5 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. He's top 10 in the SEC in rushing yards and still leads the SEC in yards per carry. So that is what Auburn's bringing to the table. And A&M is going to have to be tough in their front seven and stopping these guys. Because if the running game gets going, Bo Nix has shown the ability over these past few weeks to really take advantage of that. And his wide receivers have been making plays for him. But looking at this running attack, it really starts with one, runs off the tackle. They love to run off tackle, and they've been very, very consistent and very, very explosive when they go off tackle. But also running behind all SEC center Nick Brahms has also been huge for the rushing attack. And just a quick preview, it's not in our matchup to watch, but one of the other matchups that I want to mention is DeMarvin Leal versus Nick Brahms on the inside of that Auburn offensive line. That's going to be a huge matchup to watch because Leal is one of the best defensive linemen in the SEC. So he's going to be, I guess, tasked with trying to stop this downhill running attack up the middle for Auburn. When you look at these advanced analytics, man, off tackle, Auburn has run for over 600 yards, 6 yards per carry, 10 rushing touchdowns, over 35 first downs, and has over 20 explosive runs of 10 or more yards off the edge. That's going to be a problem, and A&M's linebackers are going to have to show that they can be disciplined, scrape the line of scrimmage, and really those DNs are going to have to set the edge for this defense. But in terms of A-gap rushing up the middle, over 400 yards, over 6.5 yards per carry, 10 explosive runs generated, 4 rushing touchdowns. That's kind of Auburn's bread and butter. We're going to stretch you out to the outside, and then we're going to go right up the middle on you and put some pressure on the inside of your defense. So their ability to attack all levels and all gaps of the defense is really impressive for Auburn, and that's going to be a key because for me, the Tigers cannot become one-dimensional against this really good Texas A&M defense. The A&M defense, for me, is really their strength. I think the defense can carry this A&M team a long way this season. This is the best defense I would say Auburn's faced since they faced Georgia over 3 weeks ago. So that's the key, is they have to be balanced here. They cannot put it all on Bo Nix on the road. But speaking of Nix, the other part of this balanced attack has to be Nix, who I think he's really shifted the narrative of a lot of people on who he is and what they expect. He's been a completely different quarterback since he was benched against Georgia State, has led Auburn since then to huge wins over LSU, their first win in Death Valley since 1999, and huge wins over Ole Miss and Arkansas, both top 20 teams. But since that moment, where he was benched, the last two games have been outstanding for Nix, and I would say some of the best of his career. Before the season, he's still completing over 62% of his passes, over 1,700 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, and 4 rushing touchdowns. But over the last two games, that's where I want to focus. He's completing almost 80% of his passes for over 560 yards, is averaging over 10 yards of completion, 3 touchdowns, and 3 rushing touchdowns. He's having one heck of a season when you look at how he responded to the adversity. He's still top six in passing yards, and he's tied first in the conference with the fewest interceptions with Matt Corral, the Heisman favorite, and also Hendon Hooker, who didn't even start for Tennessee till, I believe, the third game of the season. So great company there with Nix. But the biggest thing over these past two games I've noticed is the mid-range passing attack has really evolved for the Tigers this season. They seem to run more of that 12, 13 personnel. The tight ends have been getting more involved, and the wide receivers have been able to thrive in those intermediate routes and help them with their drop problems that they had early in the season. On intermediate passes, Nix is known for over 500 yards, over 30 first downs generated, had a big touchdown, and has a 93.3 Pro Football Focus passing grade, which just shows how efficient he has really been over the middle in that intermediate range. But let's not all give all the credit to Nix. The wide receivers have improved tremendously for Auburn. They struggled with drops early in the season. And these past few weeks, they've really been on their game, and the tight ends have stepped up in a big way for Nix and this passing attack. Kobe Hudson's been electric, over 300 yards receiving, over 13 yards per catch. While Demetrius Robertson in his, I believe he was out last week with the injury, but he had a big game, against Arkansas with a huge explosive play. But also John Samuel Shanker, 21 catches, over 270 yards. Luke Deal and Tyler Fromm have been real factors at the tight end spot. All three of these guys are going to be players to watch this weekend for Auburn. But that's the key for the Tigers. Let's get to the Aggies here. For me, the key for them lies on the ground for sure because they have one of the most deadly 1-2 punches on the ground with Isaiah Spiller and Devin Akane at running back. This Aggies offense works off the rushing attack, and Zach Calzada really benefits from these two guys being on top of their game week in and week out because Calzada, outside of the Bama game, hasn't really been a guy to carry the offense on his back. And Spiller and these guys running the ball as effectively and explosively as they do has really opened up some opportunities for Calzada to go make some plays. When you look at this two-headed monster, man, they're averaging almost 200 yards per game, over 5.5 yards per carry this season. And for me, is going to be the number one key to get them going against an Auburn defense allowing less than 130 yards per game and less than 3.5 yards per carry. Spiller, over 760 on the ground, 6 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns, top 3 in rushing yards, top 5 in yards per carry. And then Akane, the backup, man, over 600 yards rushing as well, 7 yards per carry, and 5 rushing touchdowns. He's second in the SEC in yards per carry behind Jarquez Hunter from Auburn and is top 7 in rushing yards. So for me, the running back battle in this game is going to be one to watch. Is Bigsby and Hunter going to be able to outrush Spiller and Akane? That's going to be one of the other matchups to watch this weekend. But when you look at how the Aggies move the ball compared to the Tigers, they've dominated running off the left side of the offensive line. That's anchored by Jameer Johnson, an offensive tackle who's a super senior, has loads of experience. That's going to be something to watch. Can the Tigers slow this rushing attack down? Almost 700 yards, over 7.5 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns, and 20 explosive plays come from running off the left side for the Aggies. So the Tigers have to find a way to slow that down and force the Aggies to put the ball in the air more often than not. But the passing attack, yes, may have been the focal point in that Alabama game, as Zach Calzada might have had the best game of his entire career. But he's got to continue to improve with his confidence and execution in this offense. The past 2 games, he's failed to reach over 200 yards passing, but Spiller and Akane have really carried this offense. So this weekend, if Calzada can respond like he did against Alabama, I think A&M is going to be a really tough team to beat, and they're going to be in a great position to win. For the season, he's only completing about 55% of his passes, over 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks, and a rushing touchdown. He's 11th in the SEC in passing yards. But the underrated aspect of his game has really been the deep ball. The Aggies have only taken deep shots on about 12% of Calzada's dropbacks, but that could be something to look into for Jimbo Fisher this weekend because he has to get Calzada in his rhythm and get his confidence going for this huge matchup against Auburn. In on those deep threats, he's thrown for over 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, only 1 interception, has 8 big-time throws, and a 91.1 passing grade on passes 20-plus yards down the field. That's going to be key this weekend for A&M, is to try to stretch the field against this Auburn secondary that has shown some flaws at this time. But in College Station this weekend, the wide receivers are going to have to go make plays for Calzada like they did against Alabama. And so for me, Anaya Smith, who has 31 catches, almost 400 yards, 6 touchdowns, and Jalen Watermeyer at tight end, 25 catches, 353 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Those are going to be the guys to watch this weekend. They're going to have to go be playmakers against this Auburn defense. Outside of Roger McCreary, there's some matchups that I think A&M can really exploit, similar to what Penn State did with Jahan Dotson. So if you're A&M, as much as you want to lean on the run game, you're going to have to make some throws. And if you can generate some explosive plays down the field with Smith or Watermeyer or one of these other burners that you have in the wide receiving room, that's going to go a long way for A&M pulling off a huge win this weekend in College Station. But for the matchup to watch, man, for me, there was a lot I could pick from, but I thought this Texas A&M offensive line against this Auburn front seven is going to be the singular matchup to watch this weekend if I had to pick one, because A&M's going to try to pound the football with the rushing attack, but also when they throw it, they're going to have to protect Calzada, because when he's under pressure, he turns into a completely different quarterback. And this Auburn front seven, as they've been healthy over these past few games, has really come alive. And against Arkansas, really was one of the main reasons Auburn pulled out that big win in Fayetteville. And last weekend against Ole Miss, being able to get pressure against Corral was a huge factor in Auburn pulling that game out as well. But for the Aggies offensive line, I thought they performed pretty well this season, watching some film on some old games and things like that. They're going to have a tough test this weekend against Auburn's defensive line. But the number one thing about this Aggies offensive line is their size. These guys are massive and they can move bodies on the line of scrimmage, man. If A&M can win this line of scrimmage battle, it's going to go a long way in determining if the Aggies can pull this game out. And for me, they've only allowed 13 sacks this year, 56 hurries, and 75 pressures over their first 8 games. But if you're looking for some guys to watch, Bryce Foster at center is going to be a big piece. He's been one of the more consistent offensive linemen this season. Kenyon Green, an All-American at right tackle. He can move between tackle and guard, but he's been playing right tackle this season. He is going to be a stud. And Jameer Johnson, the super senior I mentioned earlier at offensive tackle, all three of these guys are going to have big games. Look, when I go into this Auburn defensive line, you're going to see these matchups are going to appear on the edge, and nose tackle slash that defensive tackle spot for Auburn has been a real X factor for this defensive line, getting pressure up the middle with some of these new transfers they have in. So this offensive line is going to have to win this line of scrimmage battle for A&M to really feel comfortable in this game. But for the Auburn front seven, they went through some growing pains early on. They've lost a lot of talent over these past 2 seasons. You look at Derrick Brown, Marlon Davidson, Big Cat transferring out. They lost a lot of pieces, but they've really had some guys emerge as real factors. And in the linebacking spot, they had some injuries, especially Owen Papo. But with everyone coming back and finally gelling, the Tigers ranked top 5 in the SEC with sacks with over 22 on the season. And you look at someone like a Derek Hall, 4 sacks, Andrew Leota with 4 sacks, and Colby Wooden, a multiple-time player of the week this year with almost 4 sacks this season, 7 tackles for loss, 37 tackles from his D-line spot. Colby Wooden's going to be an X factor because he has absolutely wreaked havoc for 2 weeks now on the defensive line against Ole Miss and Arkansas. Arkansas, he was in the backfield and had KJ Jefferson running for his life all game long. So Texas A&M's offensive line is going to have to find a way to control this front seven. And at the linebacking spot, the reason I pushed it out to front seven instead of O-line versus D-line is that Kobe McLean and Owen Papo are going to be huge factors for this A&M team. McLean picked up a big sack last week. He's had 2 sacks on the season. Papo just got back from injury, but McLean leads the Tigers in tackles with almost 70, ranks top 3 in the SEC. And when Papo's healthy, his speed and athleticism really makes him a different factor when defending the run, because he is so fast that he can chase down running backs and make plays sideline to sideline. So whoever wins this matchup for me is going to go a long way in determining who comes out with the win. If A&M can establish the line of scrimmage, they're going to be in a very good position. But if Auburn can get pressure on Calzada, force them into mistakes, and slow this run game down and force A&M to throw the ball more than they like, that's going to be a problem for A&M in this game, and Auburn's going to have a great chance of winning this one. But for me, man, official predictions, it's always so hard with these types of games. I mean, these teams are so evenly matched because they have strong run games. The quarterbacks have some question marks, but the defenses have been playing very, very strong. They got some solid guys on the D line and some playmakers in the secondary and a linebacker. But for me, looking at how Auburn's momentum has played into this, coming off of back-to-back ranked wins and playing their best football of the season, and Bo Nix's ability to play big in big-time moments over the past 2 weeks is going to be the difference. I think Nix has a slight advantage over Calzada to make a play to win this game. I think both running games are going to have a huge game. It's just going to come down to who can make that crucial play in the fourth quarter. And I just don't trust Calzada to make that play or not make a mistake down the stretch to cost A&M this game. So I'm going with Auburn in a very, very close matchup. I have Auburn winning this game 30-23 over A&M this weekend in College Station in a very, very competitive SEC West matchup. But guys, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on the video, and make sure to enter our Game of the Week giveaway. Comment your score predictions below, subscribe, and like the video now to enter that giveaway, man. And I appreciate y'all tuning in. We dropped our college football playoff predictions this morning, so check that out. And also make sure to tune in tonight for our Week 10 college football mailbag. And tomorrow we come back with a whole bunch of more Week 10 college football previews throughout the end of the week, man. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Hope y'all having a great Tuesday. But for right now, man, the Blue Bloods are out.